Hey ha ya hey ha ya hey ya hey ha yo hey yo hey yo hey ha ya hey ya ya hey ya hey ha yo hey yo hey yo hey
I can't hear Robert. Coach Scott.
Fort Beck Community College, Ukiepino, yo, yo, me too, gashi, dagush, kashka, yogi, piano, yo, yo, wata, pevi, hagi, ktabi, ichachi, ya, bino, hey, yo, hey, yo. Hey ha ya hey ha ya hey ya hey ha yo hey yo hey yo hey ha ya hey ya yo hey ha yo hey yo hey yo hey ha ya hey ha hey ha ya hey ha ya hey ha ya hey Fort Beck Community College, Ukiepino, yo, yo, me too, gashi, dagush, kashka, yogi, piano, yo, yo, wata, pebi, hagi, ktabi, ichachi, ya, bino, hey, yo, hey, yo. Hey ha ya hey ha ya hey ya hey ha yo hey yo hey yo hey ha ya hey ya yo hey ya hey ha yo hey yo hey yo hey ha ya hey ha hey ha ya hey ha ya hey ha ya hey ha hey oh hey oh hey oh Fort Beck Community College, Ukiepino, yo, yo, me too, gashi, dagush, kashka, yogi, piano, yo, yo, wata, pebi, hagi, tabi, ichachi, ya, bino, hey, yo, hey, yo. Hey ha ya hey ha ya hey ya hey ha yo hey yo hey yo hey ha ya hey ya yo hey ya hey ha yo hey yo hey yo hey ha ya hey ha hey ha ya hey ha ya hey ha ya hey ya hey yo hey yo hey yo Fort Beck Community College, Ukiepino, yo, yo, me too, gashi, dagush, kashka, yogi, piano, yo, yo, wata, pebi, hagi, tabi, ichachi, ya, bino, hey, yo.
How matakuipi. Okay, Yushke wanchian kampi, chantewa stea, yuhanape, chuzapito. Okay, Elijah Hopkins demie. Wakchinja wakpa wonspe wankantu yata daya ya hipido. Hello, relatives, and thank you for joining us here today at the Buffalo Chasers podcast. It's good to see everybody here. We are at week number 10 of the podcast. Again, we'll be here for about an hour or so discussing different things on the podcast. Today, we have a topic of superstitions was one of the things that community member wanted us to just to discuss here. So, but before we get started away and before I get ahead of myself, I wanted to again ask Dekshi, Mr. Tommy Christian, if he would start us off in a good way and offer us a prayer, and then we can get started. So, Idama.
Oh, eche tu la wuku le chicha pro tushka. Daya chano ya wa stela tushka he. Hami taki epi daya ya ipi ushimalo tewi chasha melo. Na ha umakia na ha wa chekia chante wa ste ambekile. Na ha tiksi apo ni daki epi moyaza pi na tiksi apo ni daki epi chante yoksi to omani ukia wa ushi utala. All my relatives again, welcome. And again, we're very happy and glad that those of you that will be listening to this will understand the importance of our beginning this way, because a lot of the things that are asked are like what some would refer to as tobacco questions, but at the same time, so we always do this with good intent and a spiritual way. So we always try to start this out with prayer. So my relatives, if you could remember your people that are sick and ill and those that are walking around with a mournful heart, if you could remember them in your thoughts and your prayers at this time. Lucia, help me out here, my relatives, if you would, as we do these things. Aha, hey, atu kashila na wakantanka, tadeo ya doba, unchimaka na makaina. Na kumitake pe wanagi makpea ktaya ke, hocho ka kta hioko. Mushake ni take pe naha, Fort Peck Community College naha, unspeke oyateke naha, Itancha oyateke Fort Peck Community College, ushake okia chavo, nasu washake unkupi, nasu washte unkupi okiawo, ushui chalapo, chanku washte unkupi okiawo. Atukashila wakanta kekchewi chashamelo. Ohe chajemita wamnisha ge doba imachapi, ushimelo omakia naha, ochikia chante washte ambekile. Atukashila wakanta ga Oyate oyasi chakuluta aga omani owichakiapo ushuichalapo. Tukashila na wakatanka kiksiapo mitakia pe chante yoksicha omani naha mitakia pe wayazapi uchimaka omani owichakiapo ushuichalapo. Tukashila wakatanka kiksiapo mitakia pe naha wapia wichasha pe na wapia wiapi na ki washte unkupi na chante washte unkupi okia wa ushi wichalapo. Tukashila wakanta ka te na ekchewi chashamea lakota unspe na jikala na wasichu uaglake lila washtelo na wasichu uchikia uaglake ambekipile ushimalo. My grandfathers, as we come to you on this beautiful day that you have gifted us with, we're going to ask that you continue to help us to understand the importance of those that have supported us in our efforts to understand the need for our direction and guidance as it relates to our purpose and our dedication as we walk this Mother Earth. And as we do those things, and as humble people, as Ikchewi Chashapi, we ask that you continue to help us to realize that as we continue to do these things, we should do them with always a good heart, a strong mind, and in a good way, we try to extend those teachings to others. And we want to thank you for providing us with such graciousness as it relates to the Renuksha, my relatives that I hold dear to my heart, the older men and the older women that help me to come to this understanding of these ways of life. And as we share these things in this podcast, and this thing that we refer to as Dagushkashkam Blaska, the TV or the computer, we're going to ask that you help us to understand the importance of this purpose as we go forward in this time of this illness, this virus that is going across our country, and helping us to realize the respect that it is due. And we understand the importance of disciplining ourselves to kind of go within ourselves and make sure that we're strong in our family and our structure and the nucleus of our families, and of course our extended families, our Tioshpai. And so we pray and we ask in a good way as we attempt to go forward and make good tracks in this red road, that those that are following us will understand the importance of becoming and maintaining that humility with some dignity and honor to, again, sustain that integrity that we represent as the Kota, Nakona, and Lakota people. So as we go forward, we're going to ask that you continue to pity us, help us to understand the importance of the manner in which we go forward, how we wish to express ourselves from the inside out with a good heart. And as we do these things, we offer you all our hands, and any question that is asked today, we pray that in a good way we can answer them as well as we know how. So with that, we ask that you remember all of our relatives that put themselves in harm's way, our Adichi, Taoyateki, Uchasha, Belenwea, Bele Chanku, Washte, Unkupi. We ask that you give them a good road, all those men and women that are fighting for this freedom that sometimes we take for granted, but at times like this, we definitely appreciate. We're going to ask that you watch over them and return them home to us so that they can continue to share these stories of survival as they've experienced this way of life and such hard times at this time. So we ask that in a good way. And again, we ask that you watch over all of our relatives. Oh, Mitakia, oh, oh,
Oh, Takuase. Opitachiche. Actually, beautiful prayer. Thank you for that. Getting us started off in a good way here. So,
Scott, could
oh,
I add to that prayer?
oh,
I forgot to ask for the numbers for that Powerball. I was going to throw that in there.
uh, for sure, for sure.
Uh,
Uh, but
part of the initial superstition stuff that we wanted to get us picked up in a good way. So,
in a good way for that Powerball, those numbers. Um, so yeah, again, one of our, the missions again of the podcast is to promote mental health wellness in utilizing our culture through this discussion format where we just share a basic conversation. We try to invite all of our students through a Zoom invite, staff. We welcome them to join us. So if anybody that's listening, as we stream live on Facebook, feel free to put your comments and or questions right in any of those areas in the comment section. We'll try to address them. But please do give us a share, give us a like if you could. We want to promote the podcast definitely within the community and encourage participation. And one of the ways that we do that is we know that you're participating is through the share, through the like, through comments. Feel free to ask any questions. We'll try to address them on the spot, or if not right then, as soon as we can, maybe on the next time we meet and have a discussion.
what do they call that, Toshka? Algorithms, or what is it?
There's analytics, one of the terms. So like
With
through
likes
Facebook
and stuff, aren't they like algorithms or algorithm or something like that?
algorithms.
Is
Yeah,
that what it is? Yeah.
there's kind of
That's
like
what we're looking
algorithms.
for. Yeah.
Yeah. We can look at analytics, see who's kind of watching, but we don't always know exactly who. But by participating, we're able to tell more specifically. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it really helps us out when people do that. So we'd appreciate that. And one of the things that we've done almost weekly, Dex, I think, is we tried
Oh,
to
yeah. The
engage.
giveaway.
Yeah, giveaways. Yeah. So I didn't want to forget about it, but we have some winner chicken dinner
Oh, there
from
you go.
week 9. We have some 2 winners. I want to give them a shout out here. We have for a jacket, a really chill jacket, the one Dex she's rocking over there, man. It's got the
Yeah,
logo on it.
there you
Yeah,
go.
yeah, looking good, man. So like we got one of those. The winner for that drawing was Alex James Eagleman. Then we also have so yeah, if
There's yeah.
Alex is listening,
Yeah.
come over to Student Services. We'll hook you up. Um, Also, we had a raffle for a Kindle Fire tablet, and Gifford Standings, the winner of that. So if he wants to come on over, we'll hook you up. Thank you for both for participating.
You
And we
know
will,
that Gifford, he's a good man. You know that, right?
yeah, yeah.
He's really a good guy when he's asleep. Yeah.
Sleeping, man, he's good. You can really.
Coach Scott Gifford, he's good when he's asleep.
Uh, uh, but, so yeah, today's topic, due to some community questions, comments, was the topic of superstitions. In our tribal cultures. Maybe varying upon the tribe, maybe even vary upon the community.
Yeah.
Sometimes superstition, and some people have different takes on that. So we wanted to just kind of throw that topic out there. And one of the questions, Dex, you might have a better idea on this than me, but you know, you hear this term, especially from the locals and some of the community members that maybe aren't from here. They don't maybe understand some of these terms, and so one of them was the Gigi man, the Gigi, and then
Yeah.
another one was a Wanachi. So if maybe could share some insight on what you think about that, and maybe what's the context of those terms.
That's really a good question as it relates to some of the insight and whatnot. But I got a little story about superstition that was shared with me and as I was coming forward. And of course, my teachers were old people, and they were very gracious in the manner in which they wanted me to understand these things. And so one time I asked my dad, I said, Dad, these knockaway people are really superstitious, man. But boy, I like to really watch how they do things because, again, they were Soto people, is what they called knockaway. They were Soto people, and they were from Yellow Quill, and boy, they did everything. I like to watch them make their sweat because everything they did, they made the sweat the day they sweat. They never used no metal. They would even their forks they would make out of just kind of split a stick and then carry their fork, their rocks on those forks, and their pail was plastic, and they used splashers. There were sage splashers and pounding sticks with just out of sticks that they made that day, but everything of a natural experience, and they held on to that old style of traditional understanding, but how they protected that way was through superstition. And so I asked my dad, I said, why do they do that? Why are they so superstitious? He said, it's because they almost lost what they had, their language, their culture, everything. He said, my son, he said, uh, the ones that sat in the middle knew the truth, he said. But that superstition was to keep those kind of looky-loos, the ones that are just kind of watching and carrying these tales, keep them away. He said, but the ones that sat in the middle next to the ceremony, they knew the truth, but they kind of used that as a control factor to uh, help people understand the seriousness of what the protocol in which these gentlemen that were doing the ceremony in the middle were doing. And of course, that example I gave you about the sweat lodges is what the Soto people, how they carried that tradition on, and they understood the importance of hanging on to it, but they protected that through superstition. So the superstition provided a protection, if you will, of the true ceremony, and the ones that carried it and all that, they didn't live by superstition because all of their acts was done based on love of their people, love of the ceremony, love of their language, and they almost lost it. So he said, you'll find, my son, a lot of superstitions is incorporated. And he said, just like we shouldn't fear the spirit world. He said, they can't touch you, they can't hurt you. He said, the ones that you should fear are the ones that can touch you, ones that could hurt you. Those are the ones, in other words, the living ones, eh? He said, but when you're confronted with a spirit, they're either praying for you or they need prayer. And in some sense like that, it's the best way he could explain it. He said, but uh, then when our non-Indian relatives came about, he said that was a form of their control of us based on our naivete, because we always connected, maintained that connection with the spirit world, and the spirits always looked after us, took care of us. They even tried to annihilate us off the face of the earth, and they couldn't do it because they couldn't understand where our support was coming from. But it was coming from the spirit world. And he said that's how we always, and why we always maintained a connection of high reverence and a high regard for our women, because they were blessed with that ability to give life, right? And so we protected that. And he said, but even in lieu of that, they still tried to control us based on the fear. And of course, we had a strong uwachida, they call it, faith or belief, and it came from our heart. And so we were real sincere and committed to these ways, but yet they incorporated these superstitions to kind of control us using that faith and that belief as a form of instilling this fear in us. You better do that right, or this is going to go wrong. And what that does, and it's totally alien to our standard of understanding, because um, we don't put conditions on this higher power, on this one, this big spiritual energy. It's not a conditional relationship. And I say that because we have no concept of hell. This epitome of redemption, in which we make reference to that spiritual, that big spiritual energy, is exactly that. It's all forgiving. And that's the way we understood it. But when these different values uh, came into being, it incorporated a lot of superstitions like Gigi Man. They used, because we'd have interactions with the spirit world, and the non-Indian people didn't know what to refer to them as, and so they called them ghosts. And so we just said, "Oh, Gigi Man, Gigi Man, that's a Gigi Man." And so in Indian country, that was our reference to the Wanage, the Wanage. And in that, um, they instilled this, well, you better watch out, because they're going to get you. And then they start creating this concept of the devil, bad spirits, all this good stuff, and boom. And oh man, just out of wishing to protect our children, and of course their great imaginations, and a lot of weak people, their minds would go, the imagination would go crazy, and then it was instilled based on the information that they took in. So they made us believe that these spirits that were there to help us were there to hurt us, and that's not how we initially believed. But a lot of superstition came in and affected us, and a lot of our people kind of took on that um, um, Stockholm syndrome attitude, where we carried their values with us. And for those of that understand the Stockholm syndrome, that came from a group of people that were held hostage in a bank, and then at the end of that hostage taking occurrence, the people that were being held hostage were siding with the captors. And so that's how that Stockholm, in Stockholm, Sweden, that's what that took place. And that's why that became the Stockholm syndrome. And they couldn't understand, why did they do that? They know it was wrong, and but yet they sided with their captors, because again, they were so oppressed. They were denied water, they were denied sleep, they were denied all of these qualities of life that would bring them comfort. And so instead, they brainwashed them, if you will, for lack of a better word, those people that were captured. And that's why they refer to it as Stockholm syndrome. Well, you can apply those dynamics or characteristics of a Stockholm syndrome person to what they call a simulation. And in our case, as Native people, forced assimilation. So a lot of those characteristics we took on, and that's why I think it's so important for us to really put into perspective this superstition that is incorporated or has been implemented throughout the years into our value system, that there's no place for that. Because again, that's who we are, Dakota, Nakona, Lakota people. We're your allies, we're your friends, we'll help you in times of need. And again, you'll hear that in many different ways, that the non-Indian people referred to us as stoic, and their inference was that we were dumb and we're stupid, we didn't know nothing, so we're just stoic there. But what that really represents, that stoicism, is no fear. We had no fear, because again, it wasn't a part of our life. And as we do that, based on our ceremony, all we were wishing to do is acknowledging this love that was extended from our spiritual world through this Wankataka, or this higher power, to us. And we were wishing to convey that in a good way as we prepared ourselves in the future to go to this place, this Wakantanka, where that epitome of redemption, whatever that is, that one, that spiritual energy, that big spiritual energy, will afford us an opportunity to go to what our non-Indian relatives refer to as heaven. So once we put these things into perspective, like one that you always hear, not only with Gigi Man or all that Manazi, but you'll hear, "Don't whistle at night."
Mhm.
And they say, "Oh, why?" "Well, you're calling the spirits that come and get you." As if I wish it was that easy. I'd be calling them every little while, because that's what I'm wishing to connect with. People sit on the hill for 4 days and 4 nights wishing for a connection like that, and it never happens. So, if I could whistle at night and have the spirits come, well, that'd be a darn good thing. But if you stop and you think about that, that was one of the characteristics of our survival, because you don't hear birds at night, eh? So if you whistled at night, that would be unnatural. And so the enemy or whatever would know you're there, and you were trying to be very elusive and stealthful and not let anybody know you're there. So you didn't whistle at night and stuff like that, eh? And then like the covering of the windows and whatnot, another superstition. You got to cover your windows, got to cover all your mirrors and stuff like that. Well, that was a reflection, because again, remember, all of these things have a history. The reason we covered our windows and we did these things at night, because we got to remember, it was against the law. They'd kill you if you did ceremony, if you did that. um, People didn't understand the fact that having a drum, having a ceremonial bundle, was against the law. They would hang you for that. And so it was a very serious thing. And so we'd cover the windows and make it all like that. And we'd have a lookout out there. And if the RCMP or the police were coming, the government agents were coming, the lookout would come and tell us, and we'd hide everything and pretend like we're having a square dance. Hey, you ever see those
I did.
groups? Yeah, yeah, yeah. They would do that, and then one of the stories that evolved from that was when these ceremonial ways were illegal. You see these cowboy dances. A lot of the boys would come off the range. They'd be pushing cows all day or whatever, working hard all day, and they would come to the house and they'd be having a ceremony there, or a wachipi, which is a ceremony in itself, a celebration of life. And so these guys would leave their boots on and they'd put bells on their boots. They'd put their bustle on over their cowboy pants and their cowboy shirt, and instead of a roach, they just leave their cowboy hat on and get some cool sticks and a fan or something, and they dance like that. And then if somebody was coming, the government agents or the police or RCMP, they'd take them off and hide their feathers, and they'd be dancing the jig. Eh? Somebody have a fill out, and then they'd do that, kind of like that. And so it would change. And once we understood the importance of that, we realized that that's why I say, chokata yotaka vichasha bihe na uichake obo omani. They walked with the truth. The ones that sat in the center, they walked with the truth. They understood the importance of that. So they were the ones that realized it was responsible to kind of maintain that superstition for those people that weren't really committed and sincere about this, but the ones that maintained it, and that's what we're doing today. That's how well it was maintained throughout these years. And of course, it's oral tradition that we followed. So again, these things were key, and so not everybody knew them, nor did they want everybody to know them. They needed to keep that circle tight, and keep that information to some degree secret. And that's why we covered our windows, and we did them just at night. But you could do a ceremony in the middle of the day. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be totally dark. I was at a Wahinkiapi, and the Assiniboine called that Wahinkiapi kind of like it's kind of like a what do they call it when they tie somebody up? What is that called?
Weepy.
Uweepy. Yeah, it's kind of like that. But we did that during the day,
Mhm.
and they built a little a structure there, looked like a teepee. They threw that guy in there. He was all tied up in this star quilt, and I started singing a song. As soon as he started the song, just that quick, his stuff that he had would start flying out of that teepee. How the heck did he do that? Nobody's in there with him. How could he couldn't get untied that quick? But sure enough, he didn't do it. The spirits were doing it. And that happened in the middle of the day. And during that, there was a young boy that was being healed at that time. And he slept right through the whole thing. Before that, he was so irritated and his feet were hurting. He was in such pain. He couldn't sleep. And so here, during the whole ceremony, it lasted about 2 hours. That little child slept for that whole time. And when he came through, a week later, there was no indication of his scars. The reason I share that with you is because of the effectiveness of how these things are done. Not were done, are done. And they still can be done. And we experience these, what a non-Indian person would refer to as a miracle, but we just refer to them as a way of life because we live it. We don't wish it would happen. Just do it. They are still happening. And so in that, that's the seriousness and the importance of the protocol for those that choose not to live by superstition, choose not to live by this attitude of fear or instilling fear in anybody. And the spiritual concept is not one that instills fear. It should be one for healing. I'm your friend. I'm your ally. Dakota Wamacha. Dakota Hemielo. Lakota Mialo. Nakona Miano. That sort of thing. And they talk about these things in a very superstitious way. But guess who starts those superstitions? Guess who keeps them going on? All the ones that can't get to the center, nor do they want to go to the center. So they got to justify their inability to be able to go into the center or their fear of going into the center because of their naivete about what the ceremony is all about. They're the ones that create that superstition and justify why they're not there. Eh? Does it make sense, Toshka?
Oh, yeah, it makes sense. I think it's really helpful for some of us out there, any listeners that if we wonder why we think certain things, or some of it's learned behavior. Um, when I think it's all about self-awareness, we might not even be consciously aware of some of the superstitions that we have, but I think this really helps with us to examine kind of where we're at and kind of look at things. And also like with mental health is, I think, is the idea of what you call it, talked about faith, um, truth, freedom, like personal freedom. And the way that we do that, we've talked about this many times in other episodes, is just the idea of critical thought.
Yeah.
And one of the ways that we do that, we apply it to ourselves. I think it helps us to examine inside kind of some of our beliefs and things that might not necessarily, that might keep us from having a good, healthy worldview. I think so. This discussion, I think, puts us in that right direction. So thank you for sharing that with us.
That's the key to understanding the goodness that's here. Uh, and again, on the Fort Peck Reservation, we're such an example of that goodness, but we don't talk about it because it's still being done. Our relationships are still going on because, again, we treat each other, everybody, the same. And a lot of people don't understand the importance of that commonness that we express all the time. That doesn't just mean men, that means people, Indian people in general. And when we're living like that, uh, I think it's come to a point, and that's what I think has really promoted this opportunity to have these podcasts, is to share that experience with other people as well, letting them know, hey, we get along just well. And did you realize, Tushka, that um, the the white people are the only people that can be racist? Indians can't be racist. Think about that one.
Oh,
That's opportunity to introduce some critical thinking, eh, is to think about that and understand that. And as you do these things, well, how uh, do you overcome such things? Well, it's an opportunity for us to develop our character, to be able to tolerate such insecurities from others, eh?
Mhm.
And again, that expression of generosity, that compassion, that empathy, all of these virtues, this love, is not something that's given out conditional. It's something that's shared naturally. And that's the basis of and the foundation of our thought process as First Nations people or as Indigenous people, that it expresses itself in a loving way. Eh? And you see, but in our language, and I don't know what language does express love like love. It doesn't mean that. So when we say I love you, actually what we're really saying in certain languages is we go into definitions as if I'm stingy of you, or I wouldn't let no bad come to you. However, that's expressed in a descriptive way. Tejiada doesn't mean I love you. It's I'm stingy of you. I don't want you to go or something like that, and I like to keep you close to me. But you could define that tejiada however you want to. But again, the translation, in the English language is love, but it doesn't necessarily literally mean that. And so as we do these things, based on this naivety, and that's why I think these podcasts are really becoming more and more important, is that we're all the same. There's no white heaven, there's no Indian heaven. It's all the same. There's no segregation up there. And so with that, if we Indian people, we take on that attitude, we'll help anybody. We don't care who you are, what you look like. Or your nose could be this big, like Tushka Elijah's, but that's all right. His wife still loves him that.
Oh, she's still taking to me.
But and I was teasing because again, some people really take superstition seriously to the point to where they're so afraid, and they have to really recognize and look at who taught them that. Because when somebody comes into an arena and I watch, and or any realm that I'm participating in, observation is the best teacher, eh? So I just watch, and you can see the ones that are really scared. They don't want to mess up. As opposed to following the protocol as well as they can. Somebody instilled them this fear that the relationship they have with the spirits is conditional. If you don't do this right, they're gonna get you. Sure. As if. I'm sorry, but it don't work like that. You know, naturally, as we do these things, I had a couple of my sons go to the other side, and right away, I just observe. I won't say nothing because, again, I understand their naivety. The first stories that came out is he did something wrong in his traditional way. That's why they took his sons. Sure, as if it's a natural thing. Eh? to be prepared to go to the other side. And the only one can give a life is this higher power. The only one can take a life is this higher power. And with that epitome of redemption, they're accepted there. It's up to us as humans to overcome these superstitions and to continue on in a loving way because our relatives that have gone before us, they they didn't want us to be sad and mourn, although we do that because that's a part of who we are. We have that compassion and empathy and that love for our relation, and we do miss them. Chante yoksi jomani. We walk like that, but for a period of time. And then we understand our need to prepare to go be with them someday. Yoksha kewa chioki. Translate that, and you'll figure out what I'm saying. Another opportunity for critical thought. But look into that and see how superstition has impeded our way of life under natural law as it relates to some of these other things. And some of these other superstitions have been implemented into our spiritual way of life, like alcohol was. It, they didn't tell us the truth. They said, hey, you Indians are all going up there to try to have visions. drink a couple of this, little cup of this, it'll make you have visions real quick. Sure enough, it did.
Mm.
But it wasn't the right kind of vision. Eh? And so in that, I believe that Indian people genetically were allergic to alcohol. And so that's what attracts us to that sort of thing. Hey, I don't know how to explain that, but I'm sure somebody that has a better understanding of our genetic DNA and all that, they could explain why that attraction is there. But again, there's so many things that have become a learned behavior of Indian people based on this forced assimilation, coming from, precipitating from a way of life that is totally alien to our standard, which evolves from natural law. Does that make sense, Tushka?
Oh, oh,
Ushinala Omakia.
oh. There was a lot that you were saying that is super interesting, and I'm not even sure where to start. But like, even with the idea of the racism,
Mhm.
one of the things I was told that even pre-term Dakota, before that we were just Ikche Oyate. Is what
Oh,
I was told, and Dakota is probably really more of a more recent term, but still applicable. But within that, I think sometimes we separate ourselves from others, whether it's the way we look, whatever. But some of that's natural. But I think that's where, what if I'm hearing you right, some of these superstitions come from some uh, more of an oppressive type of culture against
oh.
those that have
So
different sets of values, and so they are no longer in positions of power, and so therefore the individuals or the culture that are suppressed by oppressors cannot be racist against the individuals that are in power, right? Is that
that's
what I'm understanding?
so
And
yeah,
so really it's almost like a counter culture to what they're experiencing. And so if that's the case, then um again, that's something to be aware of. We're not Indians can't be racist against uh Washichu.
and you see that brings a good point that segues into a discussion that we've had, Tushka, about you know we're not understanding the difference between racism and ethnocentricity. Eh?
Mm,
And when we were talking, the society or the culture that I utilized to make an example of that was the Jewish people. Eh?
mm,
Their culture is based on their language, eh? Their Quran, their keeping their bloodline, with they marry within themselves, all that good stuff, and their ceremony as it relates to all of these things we see that are Jewish. They have their own holidays, they have their own time of celebration, all that stuff. That's just being ethnocentric. Not that has nothing to do with racism. And people uh, they confuse the two, eh?
mm,
So in that, the uniqueness based on our cultural value system, which we choose to maintain, you think about those others that are European, they don't have a culture. What are they hanging on to? Does that make sense to you?
mm.
And that's not a bad thing for them. It's just that that's why you utilize Jewish people as an example because they still have their culture and it's based on their Quran, whatever their Quran says, and that's not necessarily a Bible per se, but it's a, a provider of moral and ethical values that help them make their decisions. And in that process, it becomes a very disciplined way of life. The way they wear their hair, the way they adorn themselves, the manner in which they wear that little thing on their head for whatever reason. That's a discipline. That is not, and what that discipline shows is they have the ability to follow their protocol. You see, and that's all we're wishing to do.
Mm.
And so we're not racist in that sense. Although I have been referred to as a racist because all I do is hang around Indians and go to ceremony and sweat lodges and powwows. And then, of course, I joked. I said, "No, I'm not racist because I golf." But if you start, I'm teasing, of course. But if you stop and you think about it, there's no way um, a, 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 a culture of people of color could be racist. Only ones that could be racist are our white relatives. Make sense?
Oh,
Because again, I don't like to refer to them as the dominant society because they didn't dominate me. To some maybe, but not to me. And so they're like what you said, that's how we refer to ourselves. And based on the dialects of our language, we segregated into Dakota, Lakota, Nakona, and whatever, eh? And you see how that works now? But it all makes sense because as human beings, my dad told me one time, he said, my son, he said, oh, I'm so glad these guys are so different. I said, why is that? He said, because if we're all the same, it'd be so damn boring.
it's
You
too.
know, and again, you have to look at it like that. That's why I say observation is probably the best teacher. And as we continue to walk this red road, making good tracks on it, for those that are following, we're not doing these things for ourselves. We're doing these things for our future, which is represented through our children. And so when somebody is really afraid or think that the Gigi man is going to get them or the spirits are going to attack them or take their kids if they mess up, and if that was the case, why am I doing this? You see? So that's superstition in itself. But if anybody has shared that with you, you got to look at the individual that's saying that. Who taught them that? And that's not fair. That's why the ones that sit in the center, there's the ones that say, whoa, we chop the oboe money. I walk with the truth.
Oh,
That's
oh,
just the
shit. Oh.
reason they say that. Oh,
One other question for you, and for, I study different things, and I've listened to different individuals talk about language and maybe even stories. Like there's one kind of a common thing where only certain stories, cultural stories, can be shared in winter or at night. And one of the comments I heard from an elder was that the penalty for um, telling a story when there's not maybe unkto or inktomi story is that the teller of that story might be uh, lost during a travel omani manipi. That's the penalty. They'll get lost. But those that's I wasn't sure if that's something that's you've heard before, if you want to share something about um, those types of um, beliefs. It might not even qualify as superstition. It's just a cultural belief.
no. That's exactly the point. And you see, that can go into, but what it helps you do is, how do you say, become a good listener. Eh?
Mm.
I was traveling with my dad, and he was telling me this story, and I had one of these times I told him, my dad. He said, what? I said, are you getting senile and old? He said, why is that, my son? I said, that's the 10th time you told me that story. I said, yeah. He said, do you got it? I said, yeah. He said, well, tell it back to me then. And so I told him as much as I knew, and then he started telling me where I missed these places. And he said, until you can tell that story to me all the way through what I shared with you, then I'll start with another story I'll probably have to tell you 10 times because you don't listen. But again, these things, they're uh, a way to help us understand the importance of our stories of origin, our stories of Inktomi, the moral scenario. He stuck his head in that buffalo head and wanted to dance with those mice and sing with them and whatnot. But in that whole thing, we had ways of the intent wasn't to hurt or instill fear. Okay? It was to discipline us to understand that the protocol was key. And, and in that process, for the sake of survival of the whole tribe, not just the individual. So I kind of checked that this one individual is going to be lost. He shouldn't have been out there all by himself without help anyway, because we're tribalistic that way, eh? And you would never go out by yourself like that, unless, of course, you were a trained how to do that, like we were talking earlier about the grass dance society and the disciplines they took on. And but in that process, when you did things, you did things in a manner that was for the sake of the greater good, for the whole tribe. You didn't do it just to bring honor and dignity to yourself. And if you did something courageous and brave, you didn't speak to it, somebody else did. The enemy talked about your story and it got back to the camp and said, did you do that? I said, yeah. Wow. And then the rest of it would hear the story from somebody else other than you. So we weren't braggart in that manner. And in that, it's a very humble, that's in reference to what you said again earlier, Toshka, ekchea oyateki, that commonness. We're all the same in this higher power's eyes. We're all the same. There's no
No hierarchy.
yeah, there's no hierarchy, and in that we understood the importance of a lot of these things that were implemented and that we learned was based on survival. Okay,
Mm.
We got beyond and we learned how to overcome this fear of death, but that precipitated from this instinctiveness of survival. You see, fight or flight. Okay?
Mhm.
So, that's instinctive, and a lot of people don't understand that natural law to the point to where uh, they needed to hear the stories of our warriors that went to war and they came back, and when they shared them with us in such um, a good way through the dance for the heartbeat of our Mother Earth, they would say, I duck like this when the shots hit me. When they shot at me, this is how I ducked, this is how low I went. And they're telling that story with their feathers that they adorned themselves with, that they earned. Eh? And in that, the warriors that went there, we spoke earlier about the black paint. Eh? That was acquired. You couldn't just do it. You just couldn't put it on. You had to have earned it. Eh? And remember that song we heard the other day?
Uh,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah. And again, it was so basic and common that that's just what you were doing. Why are you doing this? Are you trying to be somebody? No, I'm just trying to be able to wear black paint. And it was that simple a lot of times, eh? And so, well, I want to wear black paint too. I want to be. And when you wore the black paint, they understood you earned it, and you carried that stature or that status of that warrior. Okay, and so all of these things that are representative of who you were based on where you came from, it was key and important because you were representative of not only yourself but your family, your tribe, and in that you would represent in that way. Always carry yourself with dignity and honor to maintain that integrity of who we were. And again, there's a lot of issues there that help us understand. And again, I'm talking in the manner to really induce critical thinking. I'm not telling it to you as much as I'm sharing with you. So the manner in which I'm expressing myself is to help you think about that. If you need to, wuchikya, and ask for guidance and direction. Guess what? It will come to you. But we have to have that wawuchida, I guess is what you call that belief or that faith in the spiritual world that helps us. Mitugashi, Mikushi, Omagia, Naha. What do you say? Um, how do you say Hamblechia? When I went on the hill, there's grandfathers and grandmothers that helped me, eh? And they continue that. And a lot of people, not a lot, but I would dare say there's a few people that are pursuing a cultural perspective, and they're so contaminated with a capitalistic world that they can't think out of the box. Well, that's where they got to discipline themselves, and that's what I'm talking about in this transition. Nothing wrong with being capitalistic. Nothing wrong with paying the bills and having a nice car, having a nice house, getting your kids taken care of, being able to buy food. But the transition is what I'm talking about. To be able to leave that fast-paced world and come over here in the traditional world and discipline your mind to go there as well. Eh? Because if you're over here, you don't want to be there because it'll just confuse the heck out of you because you'll carry those values from over here, and they don't apply. And it just creates a lot of confusion. And you see that at Sundance, at Sweats, and all this, somebody trying to pray themselves into heaven. Well, but it's an honest mistake, eh? Because they don't understand that concept, and we're not here for us. We're here for the others, eh? And once they grasp it, say, "Oh, okay, yeah, I can hang. I guess I'm here. I'm not that selfish." And then you get that. Uh, uh, how do you say? Well, I've been doing this for 4 years. Where's mine? Oh, what do you want?
A
Well,
giveaway.
it's something. I've been doing this for 4 years now. I Sundance for 4 years. What do I get? I don't know. Whatever you want. But they see, it's so unconditional. Makes sense?
Oh,
You know, the more we come to know these things, the more we realize we don't. And it's an amazing thing, but in this way, we're not aspiring to knowledge as much as we better relate. We better we're better at relating to more abstract learning process, experiential stuff, and then with that, once we go through the experience and we've done it and we made it better, we can share it with the young people in a good way. But superstition has always impeded us. But you got to always look and say, I wonder who taught them that. We're not here to uh, hurt or make anybody afraid or make our kids cry for the sake of controlling them. Go to bed or the Gigi man's going to get you. Don't do that. The Gigi man's going to. That was instilling fear, and we don't do that.
mm,
It's amazing how we just kind of take that for granted. Oh, that's what it is. And like I said, that's why I went to the extreme about my two sons. People were saying I did something wrong over here. That's it.
mm.
I have no way to address that, but it just helped me to understand. Now I got some relatives on the other side that will help me. And then when I'm ready to go, I don't have to be afraid. I say, okay, no, you guys here, you got your stuff taken care of. I can go over there and be with the rest of my family, my brothers and my dad, my mom.
Mm.
Um, it's a beautiful place from what I understand. They'll share with me. So that's what I kind of look forward to going beyond that here. Kobe teaching the documentary, but a hichi out there. You see?
Oh, oh,
Right? Which makes sense, eh?
oh, and then I think it's worth sharing again. In the past, I want to say you brought up an individual named Ohias Charles Eastman, and so it's a good example of two knowledge systems. This individual was I think, a medical doctor. I think over in Sisseton, I believe, went back out east, uh, early reservation era, came back with that degree. Was also knowledgeable, culturally knowledgeable, and he made it work. And so, if that's any message, I'd even apply it to myself or any of our students.
Oh,
You know, it's up to you. How you want to make it work for you, but just make it work. And then I think part of the discussion is to flesh out this mental health, and that the um, self awareness, and hopefully this our dialogue helps listeners to think, and then it's totally doable to do academics.
yeah.
We're an institution of education, but there's different types of education. Actually already knows this, but for our students, there's the education, there's cultural education. That's, I think, what our whole message here is all about. So um, we're almost getting to the end of the hour. I don't know if there's anything else, any parting words that you want to share, Dex, but if not, I'll give my spiel. There's a couple of things I want the listeners to know related to free tuition for next semester and mental health. We have uh, an event that we do every Fridays, but I'll save that for the back. And if there's anything else you want to
Just
share.
quickly, I'll just add that, we need to understand that, and that's why I wanted to address this and how we do these things, even with these tobacco questions, is we start it with the intent of respect. That's why we start with a prayer. And in that process, we're wishing to make this adaptation during this time of COVID. We don't even like saying the name. We'd rather say virus, but people need to understand that this is why we're doing it in this manner. It's not to disrespect anything or anybody, but it's to help us understand the importance of being taking on this technology to where we can virtually connect because of COVID and the mask wearing, the disciplines we got to take on, staying home, and all this good stuff. And so now we're we're finding avenues of approach to deal with these concerns and helping our people continuing to not get so depressed, not get so uh, beat themselves up, but to help them understand the importance of this love that is out there as a result of trying to pursue these things in such a good way, in such a beautiful way, in spite of the fact that we have to stay home. So I just wanted to throw that out there real quickly so we can all understand this is done with the best of intentions. And what I share with you comes from my heart. Chante o olake, techano ushimalo, ektewi chasha mealo. Mwamishage miano na toba imakia ushima omakia ao ashtelo.
Pidama Dex. So like I was saying earlier, a couple of announcements before we conclude the podcast. Registration is open for the spring 21 semester. Some pretty cool news is that we are offering completely free tuition and fees. All tuition, all fees. I'll say that again, all tuition, all fees. A lot of times there's book expense that can run hundreds of dollars, tuition, all that. This is completely free. It doesn't matter if you're taking Wancha or Gemna Noom classes, right? You can take as many credits or classes that you want, and the tuition will be free, and all the books completely free. And so any other Pell Grants, any other scholarships that you get, it's money in the bank, mazaska, ota, you happy. So
Oh,
a lot of opportunity there for you. We're offering because of the 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 environment. We are doing a lot of classes hybrid, a lot of hybrid, meaning it's a combination of some face to face, recognizing social distancing and guidelines and masks, making it safe in our classrooms and on campus. It's under the hybrid format. It's a mixture of that and online. Some of our classes are both. There's some that are more face to face for voc ed, truck driving, those types of things with safety measures in place. But we also have a whole slew of courses that are completely online. And so whether it's a language course, something like that, it doesn't matter if you're in Minneapolis. There was an individual that's from here, lives in Minneapolis, want to take some classes. Can you do it? Heck yeah. Just
yeah.
contact us at Student Services, 406-768-6370, and we'll direct you to the right individual. For those of you that are in the community, you're welcome to come on in and get some face-to-face assistance through the registration process. Or if, say, you're way over in Minneapolis or wherever you are, we can utilize Zoom. Hook you up there, because sometimes I think there's this feeling of trepidation. It's like that's something new, man. It's like I don't know, I don't want to. No, that's what we're here for. That's the reason I have a job. That's why our staff here at Student Services, why we have a job, is to help you guys. So please take advantage of this awesome opportunity. All the resources are there. On top of that, check this out: free laptop, free internet. There's a few little nuances with that. You might need to have at least 6 credits, be a degree-seeking student. If you do that, you're good. We even have free meal plans. We got Albertsons gift cards. We'll have Main Street Grocery, those types of things for individuals. You can go online right now. Thank you for sharing that in the chat, Suzanne. She's joined us on the Zoom call. If you go to fpcc.edu, fpcc.edu, if you go right there, right on the homepage of Fort Pitt Community College, there's a button that says apply now. Click that button, and that's how you start the process. If you're already been taking classes, you don't got to do that. But if you're brand new and you're way over there in Minneapolis, that's where you go. And then our staff, someone will be in contact with you. So encourage people to take advantage of this awesome opportunity. Again, open up to everybody. We're what you call open enrollment. So that means all you have to have is a GED or high school equivalency degree, and you're good to go. Um, we we do not discriminate based on race, any of those things, age. If you have that, you're welcome to join the Society of Buffalo Chasers.
Oh,
Tape Oyate, Tatanka Wakuapi Oyate. You're welcome to join us. So please take advantage of that. Also, for our current students, every Friday at 11 o'clock, we have a thing. It's called the Virtual Talking Circle. The Virtual Talking Circle is a safe space where we send an invite to your student email, and it only goes to students. We don't send it. We don't send it out to anybody else. There's some student services staff like myself. Actually, Tommy will be there to kind of moderate, and then nothing's recorded, but through utilizing the Zoom format. So you click on the link, you can join the meeting. Then we symbolically pass the virtual eagle feather around, and individuals can talk about whatever they want to talk about. That's your opportunity to vent, but it's supposed to be a platform for students to have a discussion. So they can talk in a safe spot about mental health related things. But I think the cool thing is with someone like actually Tommy here can be there to help if need be. You can have someone to talk to directly. They have what you call little breakout rooms. You can go in there and then you can talk one on one, or if you're more comfortable talking in a group, that's cool too. And direct
very
access to
private.
help.
Very private.
Very private. Yeah, nothing's shared with anybody. It's a confidential area. We're not going live like we are right now. So completely separate from the podcast. But I did want to let listeners know that that's aware for our current students. And so again, we'll be doing that every Friday during the academic year. So with that, Midakipi, those are the main things I wanted to cover. Again, join us every Thursday from 3 to 4 p.m. We will be here, rain or shine. Dexy Tommy and myself co-hosting. Please check us out at the Facebook page. We go live there, like I said, every Thursday from 3 to 4 p.m. We archive it also immediately following this podcast broadcast. YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Fort Pitt Community College. Our whole playlist is there. This is week 10, so start wherever you want. It's not a linear thing. You can plug in any one of those things and catch up. But I think there's a lot of cool content. We've covered a lot of different areas. Every week there's been different topic, but we review a lot of things, and there's some central themes, which is mental health in this environment. So please check that out. We're also available. The audio version of the podcast is available on Apple Podcast. Search the Buffalo Chasers, Google Podcast, and Spotify, the Buffalo Chasers. Check us out there. With that, we will conclude the podcast. Mitakipi, doksta akewachia kapikte, peti washte yuhapo, daya upo mitakipi.
Hey ha ya hey ha ya hey ya hey yo hey yo hey ha ya hey ya hey ya hey yo hey yo hey ha ya hey ya hey ha ya hey ya hey yo Fort Beck Community College Ukiepino yo me too gashi dagush kashka yogi piano yo wata pevi hagi tabi ichachi ya bino hey yo hey ha ya hey ha ya hey ya hey yo hey yo hey ha ya hey yo hey ha yo hey yo hey ha ya hey ha ya hey no yo yo me too gashi dagush kashka yogi no yo yo wata baby hagi tabi ihachiya ya bino hey yo hey ha ya hey ha ya hey ya hey yo hey yo hey yo hey ha ya hey ya yo hey ya hey yo hey yo hey yo hey ha ya hey ha hey ha ya hey ha ya hey ha ya hey ha hey yo hey yo hey yo Vortex Community College ungi ebino yo yo me too gashi dagush kashka yogi no yo yo wata baby hagi tabi ihachiya ya bino hey yo hey ha ya hey ha ya hey ya hey yo hey yo hey yo hey ha ya hey ya yo hey ya hey yo hey yo hey yo hey ha ya hey ha hey ha ya hey ha ya hey ha ya hey ha hey yo hey yo Vortex Community College ungi ebino yo yo me too gashi dagush kashka yogi no yo yo wata pepe hagi tabi ihachiya ya bino hey yo
Oh, Waknushta.
Oh,
Anakta.